Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Stockham, who is a trial attorney and more importantly, a best-selling author. So welcome to the show, Michael.
It's my blessing to be on, Teddy. Thank you for having me all the way across the pond. It's great to be able to connect.
That's one of the best things about this show. I love speaking to people from all over the world. It's amazing. Now, as I just mentioned in your intro, your background is as an attorney for big businesses, and we mentioned trial attorney as well. So how has that background in the law affected the way you write your books?
So it's been paramount, and I think it's been vice versa. And let me explain that statement. So the ability or the love of telling a story has been absolutely critical to being a trial lawyer and advocate for clients and putting forward their best arguments and stories, because everything in the law is really a story. Is your story more believable than the other person? And the pressure or the crucible of trial law in order to get facts, be precise, communicate a message has really sort of informed my writing style over time. And I can explain a little bit more of that, but they're really wedded. And some of that comes out of my background and how I actually got to this position today.
Because you're obviously quite a successful lawyer. I don't know much about your practice, but how did you get into wanting to become a writer as well as being a lawyer? Because it sounds like you've got quite a lot going on in one go.
Yeah, it's a busy life. So I'm what I've always dubbed sort of an accidental lawyer. I started off. My first degree was from the University of New Mexico in writing poetry out of the creative writing department. I got a second degree after a while wandering in the woods, being a fly fishing guide, doing short stories out of Texas A&M University. And then I spent a few years further wandering around, being a dishwasher, a mason's apprentice, medical sales, things like that. And finally decided that maybe I wanted to try to earn a living instead of just scraping by. So I applied to and went to Cornell Law School. And that, at that point, about 30 years of age, is when I started my legal career.
Right, okay. And because your first book was Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer, so was this kind of like a bit of a biography then, by the sounds of it?
A little bit. So it's inspired by true events. So the title is Accidental Lawyer is definitely something that I've sort of lived by in my own life. But it's a dual thread. It's got two plot lines that run through it. One is related to a civil rights trial that I did as a very young attorney. And the other one is inspired by events with my wife and I trying to have our second child after some disastrous results with the delivery of our first. So it's really sort of an interwoven narrative that's inspired by true events. It's not actual events, because you want to be very careful with that. But yes, Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer it's not a memoir, but it does have parts of my life that people will recognize.
So when you wrote this book, one of the first things I noticed when I was researching your background, you wrote this book and it came out in 2022. But already, so in the last few years, you've already got 3,500 reviews on Amazon just alone. So when you launched that book, what did you do in order to really get the book out into as many places as possible so that you could get that immediate success?
Well, we worked. I think everybody really wants to believe that you write a book and put it out in the universe, and then your fan base just shows up.
Yeah,
it's that's kind of a myth. The fact of it is, there's a lot of hard work in the background, a lot of marketing and a lot of effort, social media wise, submitting it for awards to see if those judging bodies find the work worthy of an award, et cetera. We were lucky enough to have about a dozen awards given to Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer. And so it has been consistent process that I think has brought the success for that particular book and the follow-on novel I wrote called Jake Fox Ties That Blind. And it's the repetition, sort of scheduling, repetition, and constant feeding of the marketing beast, if you will, that actually helps.
Yeah. Were there any particular marketing strategies you used which you think really did help to turn the dial?
One that's really been very effective for us is working through BookBub.
Okay.
and resubmitting, being very consistent in trying to submit for BookBub feature deals. Those are incredible email lists to be a part of, and you can see a dramatic spike in sales, especially on Kindle Unlimited
Yeah.
through BookBub and its featured deal program.
Yeah. One of the things that I think a lot of people speak about is when you do release that book for free at first. So having that free promotion period is a really good opportunity to just get the book in front of as many people as possible. Do you think that was where you got a lot of your reviews from?
Yes and no. So a number of reviews. I think we were probably close to 1,000 before our first, or maybe 1,500 before our first featured deal. And some of that just came from advertising directly on Amazon or trying to do some more direct promotion of the book itself on some of the platforms. That can be, you have to be very careful, that can accidentally become kind of expensive
Yeah.
if you're not watching it. But the number of page reads and the number of reviews and other things that are coming in, a lot of those are coming off of the featured deal and people being able to interact with it. And some of them are coming off direct orders and sales. We can see that just especially even with Amazon verified purchases, et cetera. So
Yeah, nice. Now, with both the books, so you've got the Confessions of the Accidental Lawyer, then you've got the series of the Jake Fox book series. Now, especially the Jake Fox series, they're more like legal thrillers. You know, I've seen you compared to John Grisham, which must be really exciting to hear. But how did you structure those books? Did you follow a particular process when you were structuring them to make sure that they were as good as they could be?
Sure. So the series is something a little bit different project. The Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer came about by essentially writing two stories and then deciding, can we put it on one chronological spine and interweave them to make a novel? So that was a different creative process. On the Jake Fox series, we've been working on refining, because the project is 9 books. I've thought about setting it up essentially as 3 different trilogies, so that you have 3 large character arcs, but you don't have to carry the whole story for 9 books. You know, you can sort of, if you need to, relax after 3, because it is a big project. But setting those up and figuring out periods to put schedules and systems in. So for the second book, which we're currently working on, we put together an extensive outline, very extensive outline, so that we can know where we're going for all 65 chapters, et cetera. And so we're looking at building through the project as many systems and schedules as we can to try to make it creative, but also productive.
Yeah. This is the stuff that my listeners love to hear about. It's the real technical details about like how you write your outlines and things like that. So what does your outline look like? Because I've seen a few outlines. Some people do it really differently. They literally just write bullet points. Some people have really comprehensive spreadsheets. What does your outline look like?
So let me compare and contrast the first and second book. The first book, the outline was relatively just bullet points, 64 bullet points of what might happen in the chapter or a general direction. And to me, that ultimately ended up, when we look back at the process, that ended up with a lot of rewriting, because as you sit down with a blank page every day, maybe the book takes a different turn and then you have to go back and try to figure out where you're going. So for book number 2, I decided to do a much more comprehensive outline. And I really do have somewhat of a spreadsheet or a table. Each chapter is about a paragraph describing what's going to happen. But then I start working through some of the other components just in story theory. So, for example, there are columns that relate to the hero's journey, or books like Save the Cat. Just trying to make sure that from a technical standpoint, we're trying to follow narrative theory to a way that people understand would be a novel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. So you've taken the books, like the structure of books like from Save the Cat, and you're really applying those concepts to the spreadsheet that you've created.
Absolutely correct. And maybe not all the columns are filled out or all the cells are filled out, but for each chapter, we've tried to think through different concepts, either, like I said, hero's journey, story grid, save the cat, etc. And we also use, I think it's Author AI, one of the writing tools. I've
Yes.
actually fed the text of those cells, the story, the outline itself, into that to just double check that the outline has a story heartbeat, has a novel heartbeat, has an arc. It's not perfect, but it creates great hope that at least what you put together in an outline is going to work and hold together as a novel.
Yeah, I interviewed the people from Author AI on the podcast when I met them, and they're really, really cool guys. So definitely a tool you should check out. So have you ever seen the outline that J.K. Rowling wrote for Harry Potter, where you've got the different chapters and the different how it affects the overall story? It sounds like you followed something almost exactly the same as what she did.
It's somewhat like that. I found just Googling around and playing on the internet, I ran across one of James Patterson's outlines.
Okay.
And then I looked at some other outlines out there just to see where it was. And I gravitated toward a more developed paragraph outline, only because when you set up the system of trying to write one chapter a day, and I try to do, when possible with my job, one 1,250 word chapter in morning.
Yeah.
So when you try to take things in little bites, when you have a paragraph that describes what's supposed to happen in the next 4 or 5 pages, it makes it much easier to get past that initial impulse and inertia of a white page.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're doing that structuring, you write out what you think you're going to be writing about in the next few pages before you've even written that part.
Absolutely. So I know what is going to be coming in the next 5 or 10 chapters. I know where each act ends. I know generally how many words we're going to be at after the end of each chapter. So I've tried to make it as systematic as possible without taking out the fluidity and creativity of actually writing the book.
Yeah, I love that. I know a lot of writers find this sort of systems and things like that quite constrictive. But for me, I come from a business background. It's much more interesting for me to have it all mapped out exactly how you want it to go, so you can really start executing on it rather than just sitting down and being like, oh, what am I going to write today?
100%. And it goes back to the old adage of, how do you eat an elephant? One spoonful at a time. Yeah. So when you make tiny things, when you give yourself the ability to be successful in small increments, you can make big projects happen.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of the positive reviews that I see come up quite a lot about your books is about the attention to detail, especially in things like the courtroom scenes and the legal parts to it. Now, obviously, this is your background, but how important was it to you to get those really fine details in there to make it as realistic as possible?
Very important, partly because when you're, some of it's professional pride in being a trial lawyer, right? You want to make sure that if another lawyer reads the book, that it's as close to their experience as possible, that you're not just blowing through rules of civil procedure or other stuff that can be easily criticized. So you try to make that extremely precise. But I think there's a difference also between overloading with detail and paying attention to specific details. Some or a few perfect details that are absolutely correct can really bring a scene to life. You don't have to have a litany of 2 or 3 paragraphs of every precise detail. You want to give the reader the ability to understand what's going on, that it's correct, and give them that flash of realism through detail.
Yeah. One of the things I find when I'm seeing these like really big attention to detail things inside books is that I end up stopping reading so I can look on Wikipedia what it is, this thing they're talking about. And I think that's always a good sign that a book is doing the right thing for me, that you're wanting to research more into what the guy's talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Detail is very important. You see it in historical fiction and others, people that really pay attention to getting it right. Yeah. I think it benefits their writing because it brings the scene to life, or if it's related to a character, it brings the character to life. And characters are really the core of great writing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, with your books, there must be some parts where you needed to do some of that research in order to bring that same level of attention to detail that you bring to the legal scenes to the other parts of the book, which aren't necessarily in the court. So how did you approach that research into those different areas?
Started with just basic internet research.
Yeah.
But then if necessary, for things that if they're medical or emergency situations or something else that's detailed, you can dive into articles. It's not just enough to go to Wikipedia and pick it up. Sometimes you have to go read an actual medical journal or something else like that. For example, on a gunshot wound, how it actually affects the body, where it goes, what's possible, what's not, how long it takes to heal. All those things are available. You just have to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I interviewed Jamie Davis, who's one of the managers of Author on this podcast, and he used to be a nurse, and so he said exactly the same thing, that he was able to add that medical detail in there that other people couldn't have. So I think you're right. Getting that research in is really important to making the world feel real.
Yeah, 100%. And you want to make sure that you're trying to make it magic and not a textbook.
Yeah, for sure.
So there is a balancing act there.
Now, before we came on, we were chatting about someone who we both know, who's Aurora Winter. So she's a book coach, and she also helps people with lots of marketing and lots of aspects to making their book as successful as possible. Now, could you tell me what it's been like working with a book coach and how that's helped you to get your book to where it is today, or your series to where it is today?
Absolutely. Happy to. I think it's always good to have, whether it's a coach or a great friend or somebody, it's good to have a sounding board. Yeah. Aurora's been a fantastic sounding board. She has a great background in a number of different industries and education components. And so she's someone that, one, I trust, which I think is great. Two, who can be brutally honest, which is absolutely essential. And then somebody that helps the creative process. So when we're talking, for example, on the outline and thinking about where it goes and how the story arc works and what characters should be doing in a scene, it's always nice to have somebody to bounce those ideas off of. And so from a creative component, she's been absolutely essential, and actually over the past few years has become quite a close friend.
Yeah, that is amazing. She was a really interesting person to interview on the show. She's one of my favorite guests, actually. But so when you were working with her, so just picking up on a couple of things you said then, you mentioned about like presenting the outline to her and getting feedback on that. What would those conversations look like?
So we generally have regular calls by Zoom, and they're really sort of collaborative. They're really curious is a good word to use. Why this? Why that? Why are you making? Why do you think this would be better, or how maybe this would work for the book? So they're very curious, they're very collaborative, and very supportive. I think if you're going to work with a coach, you may have to search around for one, but you need to find somebody that you're comfortable with and that you trust, especially to give you honest feedback.
And it's probably time to leave your ego at the door a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's not so much ego as, none of this process of writing a book is going to be perfect. Anybody that has a book on Amazon knows that there are always a few reviews that are brutal. So everybody can be a critic. So to a certain extent, you got to check your ego at the door and just try to do your best. And if you do that, I think your best will be good enough. People will, if you pay attention to the craft and you really want to get your story out, I think that's going to be enough for a large part of the audience, and that can make you a success. Yeah,
that's really good advice. Going back to one of the things you said at the beginning, and I wanted to ask you a question at the time, but I had some other things. The conversation went off in a different way, so we changed it. But you were talking about making your book, the Jake Fox series, into like a set of 3 trilogies. So in your head, do you have an idea of like where they're all going to go at one point? Are you writing this with an end in mind, or are you just writing each trilogy as they come?
So I do have a general concept of what each trilogy would be about, and sort of eras, if you will, within the concept. And I think I have somewhat of an end game in mind by the 9th book where these characters will be. It's the reason I broke it into 3 is it is quite daunting to think of just keeping something going for 9 books.
Yeah, definitely.
So conceptually, I mean, they may be not trilogies, but ultimately it makes it easier to bite off conceptually, coming up with, let's keep these characters, this storyline, this plot theme alive for 3 books. And that does 2 things. One is it allows you to play with characters and sub characters for longer than just 1 book, so you don't have to wrap it up in just 1 novel. But 2, it makes it digestible from a intellectual standpoint, from your brain, that it's a big project, but it's not enormous. Whereas I think 9 full books just conceptually would be sort of overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that'd be. You got to think about this as a whole. Thinking about it as 10 books must be really daunting, because you've got all these. How long each book is, 90,000 words times 10. You're getting on for 1 million words you've got to write before you've got it all in your head. So I can see how breaking it down makes quite a big difference.
Yes, sometimes in the creative process, just conceptually being able to take things in small bites allows for writer's block, inertia, other things to disappear, so that you can just take it one day at a time.
What's your plan with releasing these books? Do you have a time frame in mind for writing and releasing each book?
We do, no later than 1 a year. We're trying to, like I said, look at the systems we put together, how we're producing them, because it's a self-published effort, et cetera, with contractors helping with different components of it. So as we get better with the system, we'd like to go from 12 months to 9 months.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it would be nice to publish 1 every 6 months, but we'll see. I'm still a pretty active trial attorney and litigator, so I've got a full profession going on. So we try to be realistic in the whole process.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when you were talking about writing a whole series of books, when we were speaking before the show, you were talking about how you had an aim to get it out to the wider world in different types of media. So what was your plan with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I believe is, especially when you look at modern media, the streaming services, et cetera, that is the most successful shows running around right now are dedicated almost all to characters. They have great plot lines. They have a lot of drama, but it's really the characters that drive people to watch. So thinking of getting into other media, the core component has to be the characters. You have to make your characters alive. So that means a dedication to dialogue, to personalities, to making each character unique. And then from there, we're actively trying to work on marketing it. We'll be at the Banff World Media Festival in Banff, Canada this summer, again, for our 2nd year, basically pitching the idea of these 9 books could be a series. And now that we'll have a 2nd book well under production, by the time we get there, we'll be able to demonstrate that the process is working and that these could actually be a long-term project.
So when you go to the Banff World Media Festival, what does that pitching process look like? Do you tell me what a day at the festival looks like for you?
It's pretty awesome. Besides being in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, there are many different components of it that you can go pitch at. So there are small meetings that are set up by lottery, which is literally an 8-minute pitch to a studio, and you can be awarded 1 or 2 of those on the lottery system. A lot of it's networking. There's just hundreds of people, the be-all, those who are the top of the top in the Canadian film world. They're there, so there's opportunities to visit over drinks or coffee or bump into somebody in the hallway. So some of it's just business networking. Some of it's paying attention to the pitching process. And I think it's important also to just be prepared. We take prepared materials when we go, so that it's not just an off-the-cuff pitch when you run into somebody.
Right. And so what were you hoping to pitch for your show? Are you just going there with an open mind, or are you trying to get it into a particular type of medium?
Well, I think set up is 9 books with 3 different trilogies, essentially. But set up is 9 books. It would fit somewhat closely to a series on one of the streaming services, with each book being a season.
Yeah.
And so we sort of put it out that way as something that could be digested by a studio bit by bit. And then also something that if it was successful on one season could have a much longer productive and commercially viable arc.
Yeah. And when you were writing these books, did you have this end game in mind whilst you were writing them? And how did that affect the way you wrote the books?
Not sure we had the end game in mind when I first started on the nine book series, but it seemed like a natural augmentation to the project. And then it's also drives from a creative process. Like I said, the dedication to character and the dedication to dialogue. So a lot of these novels have a lot of dialogue in them. Some of the chapters have, I would say, 65% of the chapter is actually dialogue itself. So trying to make them come alive through the characters and their speech is one of the ways to try to drive, I think, that media marketing on.
Yeah, definitely. When you've gone to present this, have you worked with anyone to try and build that pitch together, or is it just something that you've already known roughly what you want out of it?
No, I work with Aurora on it to put together a one sheet. We work through different graphic designers and whatnot to put it in a commercially sexy media. One sheet that goes, we take the books. And then a lot of it is just the ability to visit with people and connect on a one-on-one basis and try to explain to them what your vision for the project is and how it can benefit them and what you can bring to the project so that it's not just you asking for them to do something, it's you're delivering something that's helpful to them as well.
Yeah, nice. Now, when you publish your books in the first place, did you self-publish them or go through a publisher? And what helped you to make that decision?
So all self-published at this 5 minutes, set up our own press, which is called Whistling Pigs Press. And then we work through various different subcontractors for different components of the book. Some of those are, a lot of that is, I use Aurora as sort of a clearinghouse to help find those people. But then you also get the choice of working with people that you really find talented. Like I think our cover designer is brilliant, so we're always happy to farm out more work to him. Finding copywriters, copy editors, proofreaders, things like that. And sometimes it's super successful and sometimes you just have to pivot. But, there are enough creative freelance people out there that you can do your own self-press and publishing and pursue that avenue if you want.
Yeah. When I asked you the question, you said you're self-published at the moment. Is that something that you can imagine changing, or do you want to stay down the self-publishing route?
We debate that. So I don't, if a publisher were interested in the project and wanted to move forward with that, certainly would discuss it, right? I mean, there's different benefits to going both ways, but not opposed to it in any way, shape, or form. It was just a way to get the books out. And Kindle really has democratized publishing. So anybody that wants to write a novel and push it out can. And there are enough, like I said, creative and talented people and subcontractors that can help bring your vision to life.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, one of the main takeaways I'm taking away from this call, and I think it's kind of how I approach my writing as well, is you look at it much more as I'm creating a business around my writing and setting up all the systems in place so that it can run as successfully as possible to leave me to just do the writing. Is that kind of, am I getting the idea there?
Absolutely. So there's two compulsions for, I think, any writer. One is to write a successful novel and that it actually holds together and that there are people that read it that enjoy it. So creatively successful. The other part of it is you don't want it to just be a financial black hole. You'd like to try to be successful from a business aspect. And one of the reasons I chose to do it is because I don't plan on retiring from being an attorney anytime soon. I'm 55 this year. I could probably work until I'm 70. But my father's 92 years old. His mom lived to 105. So at 70 years of age, if I retire, I've got 35 more years to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And so on a long personal arc, what am I going to do in retirement other than just garden and sit in the burqa lounger in the house? I think writing might be a really great way to enjoy sort of retirement and, keep all the great faculties and everything else going on, mental faculties, being spry, being engaged with other people. So it's sort of a secondary plan as well.
Yeah. Great. I mean, that's the main aim of this podcast, is helping people to make more money from their books by thinking about it more as a book business rather than just as writing. So I think there's been some really cool stuff to take away for everyone who's listening to this.
Yeah, I think one of the things is persevere. There's a lot of ups and downs, and there are days that sometimes you feel kicked in the gut, and there are some days that you feel euphoric.
Yeah.
And just persevere. If you really want to write a book, if you really want to try to make it successful, if this is something that you're passionate about, like I said, take it in small steps, break it down to where you can be successful a little bit each day. And then ultimately, hopefully that arc of success goes parabolic and you become greatly successful over time.
Yeah, what a great point to leave it on. Now, just before we go, I want to give me a bit of an overview of the Jake Fox series, and without giving away what's going to happen in the end, give us a bit of an idea of where you want the series to go.
Absolutely. So Jake Fox is based on, I mean, it's not real world events, but an attorney, big firm attorney in a large town who sort of gets kicked in the gut by life with a daughter that commits suicide. So he goes home to his hometown in small town Texas called Haven. And in those particular, in that arena, he runs into different legal or other thriller type obstacles over the 9 books. And it's a rekindling of old friendships. It's a coming home. And I think it's sort of an arc of redemption for him over the 9 books.
Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in and really starting to read them. They sound right up my street. So I'm really looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great chatting to you. I've loved speaking to you about how you really see this as a book business, not just as just writing. Because I think, by setting up these systems, you can have that life that you're talking about where, when you do retire, you can just concentrate on the writing and not have to worry about the other aspects, but you've got to put that work in first to get those systems in place. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's been a blessing to be invited on, and I've had a great time conversing with you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and we'll speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Teddy.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.